In fact, it was a confrontation between two Spanish provinces, the new Castile under the rule of the Pizarro brothers and the new Toledo under the rule of Almagro. The final relationship between the two former comrades was resolved after the Battle of Salinas, in which Pizarro won. Diego de Almagro was captured and executed. 22.47 According to the court decision, the lands of Almagro were redistributed between the Pizarro brothers and their supporters. It is noteworthy that the Incas could not use the Spanish showdown to their advantage. It would seem that everything could be celebrated as a victory. But here it is, a conquistador movie with an unexpected twist. In 1541, a group of conspirators led by Almagro's son took revenge and killed Francisco Pizarro in his own residence in Lima. Dramatically, of course, a surprise for Pizarro. Exactly. These are the conquistador showdowns. In 1542, the Viceroyalty of Peru was created from the New Castile and the New Toledo, incorporated into the Spanish Empire. It was this possession that would become the most important and profitable for Spain, primarily due to its reserves of gold and silver, and would arouse the envy of other European monarchs. And what about the other powers, by the way? Did they really sit idly by and take no action to compete with Spain and Portugal? But no, England, France and Holland wasted no time and actively tried to grab a piece of the American pie, aiming at both South and Central America, not to mention the islands in the West Indies. 24.14 For this purpose, they used pirates, filibusters, and buccaneers, who robbed mainly Spanish ships and the American colonies of Spain. In 1578, the English pirate Francis Drake reached the coast of South America in the La Plata region and passed through the Strait of Magellan into the Pacific Ocean and began a 3-year marathon of plundering the Spaniards. For the glory of the crown, Drake sets the trend. For many decades to come, if you want to make a career, beat the Spaniards. From that moment on, all participants in the struggle for American wealth did not disdain to resort to glorious privateering. In 1565, the Portuguese built Rio de Janeiro. In 1580, Buenos Aires was refounded and finally founded by the conquistadors. And in the same year, as a result of the Iberian Union, Spain and Portugal merged. Under the control of the Habsburg dynasty, Spain's power grew to indecent proportions. Philip II becomes the most powerful man in Europe. Perhaps, in the world as well, the resistance of the Indian tribes was an attempt to stem the tide of internet memes. Conquered peoples mostly try to coexist with the Spaniards and gradually mix with the colonists, adopting their culture, language, and religion. The myth of El Dorado encourages Europeans to explore the central, hard-to-reach regions of South America. More and more Spaniards and Portuguese, inspired by the success of Cortés and Pizarro, strive to find treasure. In the 16th century, a religious schism occurred in Europe. French, English, and Dutch Protestants flee to the New World. The rapid development of colonies begins, as well as the acceleration of the conversion of local tribes to Christianity. Since 1600, the French and English have increasingly visited the shores of Newfoundland. Due to the abundance of fish in these places, fishing and the fur trade bring great profits and contribute to the acceleration of colonization. Later, France moved inland, established ties with local tribes, and founded Quebec in 1607. England founded its own colony in Jamestown. The first English colonists faced great difficulties. They came into conflict with local tribes, suffered from hunger and disease, but were still able to gain a foothold, surviving a difficult winter. In 1620, the Puritans, known as the Pilgrim Fathers, arrived in America on the Mayflower. There, they also conclude an agreement among themselves that consolidates the foundations of the legal status of the colony. Observing all this colonial excitement and seeing a threat to its colonial possessions, the Spanish government equipped and sent a huge squadron to the shores of England. However, this invincible armada was defeated and Spain lost its maritime power over the next 100 years. 13 English colonies emerged in North America, quickly becoming self-sufficient. The herring industry and trade with neighbors developed. The basis of the colony's prosperity was the export of tobacco and numerous plantations where slave labor was used. Meanwhile, the Dutch, for economic reasons, also began to develop new lands. In 1624, they founded the settlement of New Amsterdam. The settlers gradually expanded their holdings, thus creating a new Netherlands. The East Indies Company acted as the engine of Dutch colonization. Meanwhile, England somewhat strengthened its presence in the region. They managed to expand their holdings in North America. Then, they entered into periodic clashes with France. In 1640, Portugal gained independence, but its power was significantly undermined. The English, French, and Dutch, with the help of trading posts and companies, were widely displacing the Portuguese colonial empire. Spain, under Charles II, the last monarch of the Spanish Habsburg family, also began to lose ground. The Spaniards were forced to recognize the independence of Portugal and the United Provinces, the 30 Years' War, the rebellion in Catalonia, the confrontation with England, constant raids by raging privateers, and the war with France and the Treaty of the Pyrenees of 1659, after which Spain's economy lay in ruins. The leadership of colonization passes to France and England. The North American colonies are actively populated by the English, Germans, French, Dutch, Irish, and Scots. Welsh, Swedes, and Finns, and each had their own reasons for this, from purely practical to ideological and religious. English gradually became the common language for this entire hodgepodge of peoples on the territory of the future independent states, and English and French became the common language on the territory of the future British Canada. New nations of Americans and Canadians were formed. The colonial British Empire became the new mistress of the seas. By 1713, it had captured part of France's territory. The outlines of the future Canada were taking shape. In this war, local tribes actively fought on the side of the French. Feared as a result of the clashes that followed the strengthening of the English colonies, many Indians died and were forced to leave their familiar places. Their numbers were declining. By this time, the population of the English colonies was several times greater than the number of French settlers. This is a key point in understanding why the English were seizing the initiative in North America. In North America, this conflict is considered part of the War of the Spanish Succession, as a result of which the Spanish Empire finally ceded its primacy of world domination to the British Empire. English colonies continue their rapid development and expansion. France tries to compensate for the loss of influence by using Indian tribes for its own purposes and also by uniting with Spain. This leads to King George's War of 1744 to 1748, as a result of which the British strengthened their presence in North America. In 1741, Vitus Bering's expedition reached the northwestern shores of America. The Russian Empire begins the colonization of Alaska and the Aleutian Islands. Soon, the 7 Years' War broke out, which is sometimes called the First World War since it included several continents at once. This conflict did not bypass North America, where the interests of England and France clashed. The war ended with the Treaty of Paris, according to which the British got all of Canada, the eastern half of Louisiana, and Florida, which previously belonged to Spain. This war is notable for the fact that in addition to the traditional participation of Indians, with both sides distinguished themselves with high quality and active actions, many colonists from the local militia. An interesting fact in this war, in addition to the Indians, it suddenly turned out that local colonists also knew how to hold a gun, and even George Washington, the future star of American presidents, tried himself as a soldier. All these events, including economic constraints and war fatigue, pushed the colonies to the idea of declaring independence, but that, as they say, is a completely different story. The active process of colonization came to an end. Further, in North America, Indian tribes will be displaced further and further until they are either killed or expelled from their native lands and placed on a reservation. In South America, on the contrary, with the exception of the conflicts already described, the local population will increasingly mix with the colonists, adopting the Spanish or Portuguese language and the Catholic faith. To some extent, the Indian civilizations of Central and South America, having changed significantly, will receive a new life as part of new national states. Here, too, at the beginning of the 19th century, the contradictions between the colonies and the center will reach the point of no return. The colonists and the local population have already largely inspired by the example of the United States. The indistinguishable from each other will begin their struggle for independence, which will lead to the emergence of many new states on the political map and give the world a unique Latin American culture. If you like this video, please subscribe to the channel. Like and turn on notifications so you don't miss new videos. Share your impressions of the video in the comments.